Now we'll touch on the next aspect of service to our neighbors. Dr. Fesniak.
Your Grace, Reverend Fathers, Sisters, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid that I've got to read in order to maintain this 5-minute cutoff. Although nowadays it takes me longer than 5 minutes just to get my socks and shoes on. And my brother, Father Mark Fesniak, I now understand what you go through every weekend. My charge is service to neighbor, and I've chosen the corporal and spiritual works of mercy to provide a guideline for self-assessment and meditation. St. Thomas Aquinas tells us that mercy is a virtue influencing one's will to have compassion and, if possible, to alleviate another's misfortune. The operative word here, I believe, is compassion, derived from the Latin compassio, or with suffering. Unlike sympathy or empathy, compassion hurts. It takes work. By extension, so does mercy hurt. The corporal works of mercy are direct admonitions from Christ, as published in Matthew 25. To feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to harbor the harborless, to visit the sick, ransom the captive, to bury the dead. And symmetrically, there are 7 spiritual works of mercy. I'm not going to read them all for time's sake. But allow me to provide a poignant example of 1 or 2 of these, such as instructing the ignorant and feeding the hungry. I am a teaching physician and am frequently surrounded by trainees, including medical students, interns, resident doctors, and fellows. I'm not implying that my team is ignorant. In fact, their knowledge is often much more current and much more sophisticated than mine. Many of these young individuals, aged 25 to 35, hail from affluent families, are world traveled, have parents with distinguished resumes. Their ignorance arises not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of being able to think outside of the proverbial box, lack of courage, lack of self-sacrifice. So let me share a story. One Sunday evening in January, after an already hectic and exhausting weekend, our team was forced to admit a somewhat annoying man suffering from the ravages of diabetes and continued tobacco use, which had resulted in severe cardiovascular disease and amputation of both of his limbs. He moved about in a trendy motorized wheelchair, which he obtained compliments of the taxpayer, and he had a penchant for prescription pain relief. He knew all of the symptoms of acute coronary syndrome. I explained to him in the presence of the house staff the proposed procedure for the next day, which included a heart catheterization to better define and treat his heart's blockages, if indeed they existed. He was very anxious about having catheters stuck into his heart. He needed to smoke, and even though the nursing staff had clearly made it known that this was not going to happen anywhere on the hospital property, he had no family or friends present, and wanted nothing to do with the hospital chaplain. He was disenfranchised from spirituality or religion. I did my best to comfort him with my words, my touch, as well as my meditation. I told the residents that this patient was surely going to give us a challenge. I went home that Sunday evening to get a few hours sleep, anticipating an impossible Monday and even more impossible week ahead. When I arrived early Monday morning, I found the patient gone, and the house staff had smiles on their faces. He left KMA against medical advice. But don't worry, Dr. Fesniak. The discharge summary and all the paperwork was done. We were certain to document his foolish decisions in all of his indiscretions. We made sure that we covered your back end. Who picked him up, I inquired. It's bitter cold out there. Does he have a ride? The look of ignorance was written all over their faces. The morning rounds would be delayed that day, as I somewhat eagerly began to Korea, South America, as well as our American physician trainees. I used a well-known figure of Mother Teresa of Calcutta as a teaching example and recalled to them what she wrote in her memoirs about seeing the face of her Savior, her raison d'etre, while ministering to the wretched, having the most disgusting physical infirmities, and dying on the streets of India. Now, I practice in a very secular and politically correct institution where the CEO was friends with Michelle Obama when they both worked at the University of Chicago prior to their present positions. I fully expected that there would be repercussions for my brazen openness about a religious or spiritual approach to treating the lost soul who soiled our doorstep that January day. Much to my surprise, later that month, I was notified that I had been named Teacher of the Month by the resident physicians. This is an honor not to be taken lightly, and I am the first and only one of two such individuals in cardiology department to receive this accolade. And so I challenge this group, this archdiocese, to seek not only to serve the old